Thank you so much for joining us for our virtual Relay for Life event. Since you've now tuned in, we want to know where you're tuning in from. Is it your dinner table? Is it your bedroom? Is it your garage? Which province are you in? What city are you coming to us from? Let us know in the comments.
Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing good. Again, welcome to our virtual Relay for Life. I am Swapnil Ahmed, a first-year student at Sport and Recreation Management and the co-president for Relay for Life.
And my name is Kiara Clement, and I'm the president of your Student Representative Council and the co-president of the St. Clair College Relay for Life. It is so wild that today is the day. We have been planning this since November, and we've been in talks about this since last year. Myself, Swapnil, the Student Athletic Association, the Student Representative Council, and the Thames Student Incorporated, and many more in between have been working so hard to prepare for this day. It has changed drastically since November, and even doesn't look the same as what we've been discussing at the beginning of March. And so I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for showing up today for yourself, but also to explore the power that exists within storytelling, meditation, community, and connection. To talk about why we relay and what really brings us here today, it is community. We are here because community is bigger than cancer. And we have joined a community that champions those who have survived cancer, supports those fighting cancer, and helps honor the lives of those we have lost due to cancer. Now, to our participants who have been with us since the beginning, signed up, have been raising money, encouraging others to join, thank you so much. Thank you so much because you were our driving force. You encouraged us to keep going. You were in our corner, and we really appreciate you for trusting us on this journey. We have experienced so many waves, as you could assume every first type of event would, and so we just truly appreciate that you've stuck with us.
We would now like to give a shout out to Heather Baigent for being the individual that fundraised the most and thus far for team fundraising. At the first place we have the St Clair SRC, at the second place we have the SRT Club, and at the third place we have the St Clair eSports Club. Thank you all. Our fundraising center will still be open for another month, therefore we will update our new top individual and the top team again very soon. We would also like to take a moment and thank our sponsors. You helped us come this far and we appreciate you. St. Clair College, St. Clair Student Alumni Association, St. Clair SRC, Student Athletic Association, Thames Student Incorporated, and RECO International Manufacturing Group. Thank you.
Hey, hey, away, we relay. Hey, hey, away, we relay. Hey, hey, away. And now I would like to present to you Rachel Friesen. She is a cancer survivor, and she is here with us today to share her story. Take it away, Rachel.
Hi guys, my name's Rachel. I'm 24 years old, and I'm a graduate of the Childhood and Social Institutions program at Western University. I'm also a childhood cancer survivor, and today I'm here to tell you a little bit about my story. Full disclosure, I know this is a really weird angle, but it's the only angle that I could still be outside and also look at the notes on my computer without it being weird, so I apologize if this is weird for you. So what a lot of people don't know, kids and teens can get cancer too. It's not as common as it is in adults, so people don't hear about it as much, but cancer causes more deaths in kids than any other disease. And right now in Canada, there's about 10,000 children and teens living with cancer, and I was one of them. I was diagnosed with leukemia in October 2010, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it was like. So there are different types of leukemia. There's acute lymphoblastic leukemia and acute myeloid leukemia. The one I had was acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and it's the most common type of leukemia in kids and teens, and it's also the easiest to treat and cure. So I was diagnosed at the beginning of my grade 10 year. It started off with me just feeling not that great. I just was sick and I stayed home from school, which was really unusual for me. I never missed school. But I stayed home for 3 days. And then I began noticing when I walked to school, a burning sensation in the back of my legs and my calves. And the 3 blocks that it took me to walk to school seemed like a really long way to go. I also found it harder to climb the stairs at school, so climbing the stairs to the 3rd floor for a class was way harder than it used to be. I didn't feel very hungry, which is also very odd for me because I eat literally all the time. And I lost some weight. I also started taking naps after school, which also when I was 15 was not a very common thing for me to do. Now I take naps all the time. And I started going to bed earlier and earlier. And if my friends would call to ask to hang out, I would say no just because I didn't feel like doing anything. So my mom made me an appointment at our family doctor, but that appointment got postponed because we had to fly to Alberta for a funeral. So when we came back to London, my mom made another appointment, and my doctor did a physical exam, and she said that my spleen and liver were enlarged. So she sent us to Emerge at Victoria Hospital in London. And when I got to Emerge, they took my blood pressure and my temperature, and they did a blood draw, and they noticed that I had really low red blood counts, so I got a blood transfusion. And then when I got the test results back from my blood test, they told us that I had leukemia, and that pretty much was when my whole world flipped upside down. When you're 15, you are thinking about boys, or thinking about school, or thinking about that volleyball game that you have on Wednesday. You're not thinking about potentially life-threatening illnesses. I had gone from being a completely healthy, completely normal 15-year-old who liked swimming, who was really into musical theater, and I loved going out with my friends and my family, and going to school, to a teenager whose days were filled with hospitals and needles and IVs and medicines and tests and scans and all kinds of scary words. So my life completely flipped upside down. It's kind of like when you put your sheets in the dryer after washing them, but then also your socks and your underwear are also in the dryer, and you put it on the spin cycle, and when you go to take it out, it is all one big mess of sheets, and you can't find any of your socks, or you can only find one sock, and it's all just very confusing and takes you forever to reorganize it. That's kind of what it feels like. So I stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks after I was first diagnosed. So they told me in Emerge that I had leukemia, and then I went back upstairs in the hospital they gave me a room right away. And my parents stayed with me the whole time. There was a bed. They asked for a bed so they could stay overnight with me, which was really nice. I wasn't allowed to leave my room except for tests and procedures, and if I left my room, I had to wear a mask, a lot like the masks that everybody's wearing right now, because I had no white blood cells, so I had no way to protect myself against infection. I was allowed to have visitors, so my friends could come and visit me, but if they came, they couldn't be sick, they had to wash their hands, and they had to wear masks also. But that was really nice that my friends could come and see me, because it broke up the day a little bit, and it just made things feel more normal. On the second day that I was in hospital, I had a bone marrow biopsy, so the doctors could figure out what kind of leukemia cells were in my body and how many there were. I also had to have a lumbar puncture, which is pretty much they stick a giant needle in your spine. You're asleep for it, don't worry. And then it's just to test to see if there's any leukemia cells in your spinal fluid. From the bone marrow biopsy, I found out that 90% of my cells in my bone marrow were leukemia cells. And a diagnosis of leukemia is usually made if there's more than 25% of the cells in your body are leukemia cells. I had lots of blood transfusions in the first week that I was diagnosed. If you don't know, leukemia is the cancer of your blood. So, like all of your blood cells are leukemic, or they're dying pretty much. So I had a lot of blood transfusions. I got wheeled around on a stretcher and in wheelchairs to other areas of the hospital for x-rays and ultrasounds and all kinds of crazy tests. The doctors wanted to see if the leukemia had spread to other organs, so like my heart or my liver. Luckily it hadn't. On the 4th day I was diagnosed, I got a surgery for a portacath, which is pretty much a little device that looks like a lollipop, kind of. It's made out of metal and plastic and rubber, and it's round, and then there's like a little tail, and it goes underneath your skin, and it's pretty much so that doctors and nurses don't have to keep giving you IVs in your veins. So this way they can just stick it into the portacath, and then the tail is a tube and it's threaded into a major vein, and you can get blood draws and you can get IV medications through it. So it's easier than getting IVs over and over again. And then when I finished treatment, I had surgery to get it removed, and it usually sits like on a person's chest just under the skin. So usually if you ever see like a kid who is going through chemo, ports are the most common device that are used, and it's usually very close under the skin, so you can see there's like a bulge kind of where it would be. Anyways, treatment for leukemia for girls is usually 2.5 years. After my initial diagnosis, I still had to go into the hospital for regular appointments and for chemo, and over the course of my treatment I had tons of weird reactions to chemo that left really strange side effects, like temporary paralysis, being unable to walk, and I even developed an anaphylactic reaction to one of the drugs. And at one point I was in the ICU for a month over Christmas, which was super fun. So putting a lot of restrictions on what my family could and couldn't do over the course of those 2.5 years. Like in school, I could only complete 4 out of the 8 courses that I had during my grade 10 year, and my family couldn't go on trips or vacations outside of London because I didn't have any immune system and I couldn't go anywhere. And I needed to be close to the hospital in case something happened. I was super vulnerable to infections and diseases and fevers, so it was possible that I had to be hospitalized pretty much at any time. Those are the not so great things, but there are some really good things too. I met tons of really nice doctors and nurses at the Children's Hospital in London, and without my diagnosis I don't think I ever would have heard of Camp Trillium, which is where I met Charlie. It's a camp for kids and families going through cancer and cancer treatment, and it's just a camp where kids can go and be kids again. It's a totally regular summer camp. We have all the same things that, your normal summer camp you'd think you would have. There's canoeing and sailing and hiking and kayaking and rock climbing, archery. And it's just a place for kids and families to go and get a break from being kids and families with cancer. It's a place for them to go and just relax for a little bit, and that's the most wonderful place on earth. I'm not gonna lie. It's my favorite place in the whole world. And I've met so many amazing kids, so many amazing counselors, so many amazing friends, and friends that I'll make and I'll have for life. And then the last positive, not the last, but another positive thing is, without my diagnosis, I don't think I would have found the career path that I'm on now. Until I was going through treatment, I had never heard of a child life specialist before in my entire life. But for those of you who don't know, child life specialists work primarily in children's hospitals, and they explain treatments and operations and procedures and all that jazz to kids, but through play. So in ways that kids can understand and ways that make it less scary for kids to be going through these things. And that's a job that I never thought I would want to have, let alone a job I never knew existed. So without my diagnosis, I don't think I'd be on the career path that I am today. So, in conclusion, I would like to leave you with this. Even though I had cancer, I don't think I would change any of it for the world. I wouldn't change what happened to me, because without it, I don't think I'd be the person I am today. So thanks so much, guys, for having me as part of your virtual Relay for Life event. I think it's really cool that your event is virtual, that it's still happening even though there's all these wild things happening in the world right now. But I hope you guys have lots and lots of fun, and I hope that you guys meet your fundraising goals, because this is an amazing organization and it's there for lots of people who need it, and I hope you guys have the best time. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing with us the inside scoop on your experience, the ups, the downs, and for being a beaming light of hope.
Hey, hey, away, we relay. Hey, hey, away, we relay.
Now, we would like to call Jeff Casey, owner and publisher of Snap Windsor, founder Play for a Cure Windsor addict, and a cancer survivor himself.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Casey, and I've been asked today to speak to you a little bit about my cancer experience. I want to start off first by thanking the committee for putting this event on, Virtual Relay for Life. Genius. I'm so happy that you are actually making this happen when a lot of people would have just let it go because of what's going on. Relay for Life is a significant event in our community. It does a lot for people who are remembering loved ones that have passed, people that are actually going through the fight, and people that that are working through this. So thank you for doing that. So my personal journey begins in September of 2008. Mind you, I'm going to say that I had a ton of influence leading up to that point, which really helped me get through it. Some of which I'm gonna touch on. Now, early September 2008, I started to feel a little tickle in my throat, and I was away with the friends and we were golfing, and something just didn't feel right. I ended up going to visit with my grandma, and I was with my wife, and I looked down my throat and I saw this massive lump in my throat. It was like the size of a golf ball. And I was wondering why I had this tickle, and it's because half my throat was closed. Anyways, I remember distinctly looking down my throat, seeing that lump and thinking, holy crap, I have cancer. But, I showed my grandma, who knows everything, and she said, no, that's tonsillitis. I'm like, oh, okay, tonsillitis, we can deal with that. So waited a couple days, went to the doctor. He looked down my throat, said, tonsillitis, here's some Biax, and away I go. 8 days later, nothing had changed. So I went to see another doctor. I ended up meeting Dr. Jocelyn Warwick, incredible physician. She looked down my throat and kind of calmly panicked. She's like, okay, you're gonna go get this blood work done, you're gonna go get this x-ray done, and we're gonna follow up with you right away. Like, okay. So she walked me over to the x-ray. I was like, that's kind of weird, you go in a walk-in clinic, they don't normally do that for you. But she did, and so I get my x-ray, and while I'm sitting there, she texts me, she's like, okay, and here's the address for the blood clinic you're gonna go to. Okay. Get the x-ray done, go to the blood clinic, getting blood work. Afterwards, she calls me about, I don't know, maybe an hour later or so. And she's like, okay, I have an appointment for you with Dr. Ling, an ear, nose, and throat specialist. I don't know if any of you have tried to get an appointment with an ENT. You're probably looking at 6 months to 12 months, especially for an adult. They typically deal with a lot of kids, trouble with their tonsils, adenoids, things like that. So I'm kind of a bit of a panic all around this, right? Because, you know, when you become a priority in front of a physician, you know that something's up, right? So anyways, get all this done and get in to see the ear, nose, and throat specialist and Dr. Ling, and, you know, talking a little bit. And he's like, okay, I'm going to look down your throat. Takes a little light, looks down my throat and steps back. He's like, we got to get that out, and we got to get it out right away. I was like, why? And he, in a very awesome way, kind of, you know, looked down, then looked at me straight in the eyes, said, I think it's cancer. So that is kind of when maybe the reality set in a little bit of what the actual possibilities are of what I was about to go through. So he's like, come with me. So go to the front desk. He's like, when's my next appointment in the operating room? Like, when am I scheduled for? And his secretary said, here, it's next Thursday, and here's your time. He's like, okay, you need to, you know, reschedule this person, and Jeff needs to go in right there. So again, like, when you become that priority, you know that something serious is going on. So next Thursday comes along, and I get into the surgery. So it's just removing my tonsils, and but he's taking it very seriously. He comes to talk to me before the surgery. He says, it might take a little bit longer because I'm gonna make sure that I remove everything possible, you know, just to be safe. So okay, great. Surgery afterwards, most horrendous amount of pain I've ever experienced after the surgery. Essentially, they take out your tonsils and then they cauterize your throat. As a kid, it's not as bad apparently because, you know, they recover so quick. But I was the ripe old age of 33, and it hurt like hell. So, you know, I get pain medication. I don't do well with narcotics at all. So anything that's too strong, like morphine or Dilaudid even, anything like that, I don't do well. Nausea, vomiting, stuff like that. So I have to stick with the Tylenol 3s with a little bit of codeine in it. And, you know, I'm starting taking 2 of those every 4 hours, and then it's 2 every 3 hours. And, you know, then I'm in an incredible amount of pain. Like, I even go to the ER a couple times. So I can get through this with you know, about 6-7 days. And, you know, I've kind of purposefully left out a fairly significant aspect at this point. My wife at this point is 39 and a half weeks pregnant. And so we're in the thick of things and ready to go. So, you know, I'm day 7 after the surgery, incredible amount of pain. You know, it's 2 a.m. and my wife, you know, starts the contractions, and we start the process of, holy shit, we gotta get the bag ready that's at the front door and get to the hospital, which we do. And so September 24th, 2008, my beautiful daughter Isabella is born, and it was just an incredible experience. But kind of in the back of our mind, of course, you know, there's, well, what's the story with Jeff? Because, you know, we just had this lump moved from his throat, and we're just waiting on the pathology report. And so the next morning, which is September 25th, I actually had made an appointment with the doctor to go get some more pain meds, and he wanted to take a look at things anyways. So because my wife's in the hospital, my grandmother decides to come with me, or I guess more like my wife made me bring somebody, because I guess you never know what's going to happen. So we get in there, and Dr. Lin comes in, and he's got all these pages with him. And just as he's about to kind of start talking, knock at the door, and the nurse comes in and says, Dr. Ham is on the phone for you. He's like, okay, Jeff, just hold on. I got to go talk, and I'll be right back. He leaves, 5 minutes, comes back. He's like, okay. And he's got the papers, and he's like, okay, you have cancer. You have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We're not too sure of all the details, but this is the preliminary info, and, you know, time is sensitive with you right now with, you know, having the baby born yesterday. And so that was actually Dr. Ham, who is an oncologist. She's going to be your oncologist, and I've called her and talked with her about your case and told her your situation, and you have an appointment with her like next Tuesday or whatever it was, like in 3 or 4 days. So holy crap. So back to, you have cancer. It's a punch in the gut. It's a slap in the face. It's your world turned upside down. It's any one of those things that you want to kind of describe. Like the emotions are running crazy high. I've got my grandmother with me, and I have a wife back at the hospital who had just given birth to our daughter. So now I have to, of course, go back and tell her. It's not going to call her and tell her or whatever. I have to go and tell her to her face, and so we go right back to the hospital, and I got to go in and tell her. And probably the hardest thing, well, one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life is that, for sure. And you know, I had to tell her that I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which happens to be the exact same cancer that her mom still gets me, that her mom had died from around 1998, about 10 years before that moment. And at the same time, her father had passed away from another type of cancer, but about 6 years before that. So, you know, fast forward a couple years, my wife told me that actually in that moment is when she started to prepare for me not to be around anymore. I don't know, like that you think about that, and that you've just given birth to, like, you know, it's one of the most important things in your life, and it's life changing, and all of a sudden you have something in your arms that you don't care more about anything other than that bundle of happiness. So I know it was a lot for me to take, but it was a hell of a lot for my wife to take. Let alone, you know, my mom, my grandma, the rest of my family. Really, really difficult time to deal with, because we had such a happy thing combined with such a scary thing. And in retrospect, and kind of even in the moment, it was one of the best times that I think I could go through that. It caused some problems, don't get me wrong, but here my wife and I had our daughter to kind of carry us through, right? So, you know, and as she gets older, she's 11 now, she'll be 12 in September. As she gets older, she'll be able to see the pictures and the stories and all that kind of stuff, and it will get her one day, right? But one of the things that I touched on at the beginning of this is the fact that I feel as though I was kind of prepared to deal with this, and a big part of that is in shouldn't say it like that, and how I was raised, between my mom being such a tremendous giver, and my grandma and grandpa being such strong support and leaders. And one of the biggest things that I learned from my grandfather was attitude, and having the right attitude. There's a poem written by Charles Swindoll, and it's called Attitude. And I think the line that means the most to me, and I think in the entire poem for that matter, is life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. And that can carry you through any situation that you're involved in, whether it be good or bad. People have bad days all the time, and they may take it on things that they don't even know they're taking it out on. And if you don't know that, then your reaction can kind of be the same, and it can kind of, you know, go into this bad thing. But, you know, if you can kind of put yourself in the shoes of whoever it is that you're dealing with and kind of turn it into a positive, then, you know, that will take you very far in life. It even goes back to that little commercial, right, where, I don't know, the lady the guy drops an orange and the woman picks it up, and then somebody else opens her door, and then somebody like helps her from crossing the street. Like, this kind of goes on, and to a point where you're kind of doing that pay it forward thing, you know? So anyways, kind of back to after so my diagnosis, and the next, I guess, step is obviously I go to the cancer center, and I think my oncologist is Dr. Hamden. She's aware of our situation, and but I don't think many others are. And not that it matters, but we were treated like gold, like family, from the second you cross that threshold into the cancer center here in Windsor. I always called it like the best, worst place to be. Like, nobody wants to go to the cancer center. You do not want to go there, especially as a patient or as a family member, as a friend, whatever it is. You're there typically because somebody has cancer and it's life-threatening and all these different things, emotions that run with it. But from right after the first time I met the lady at the front, Mary, there, it was, "Hi, Jeff." And every day that I went afterwards, it was, "Hi, Jeff." And that carried through the entire center. I've remained friends with a ton of the people there. And I go back to see them because they're incredible people. Their hearts are as big as they come, and they take care of everyone that walks through that door. And I felt such a huge part of their community in an extremely positive way. You go in there and now they're there for you. It's a very surreal thing, and to be honest, it didn't really kick in until, maybe, I don't even know when, but maybe it just slowly evolved in me and how I was like interacting with the people there. It was comforting to go there. I didn't feel scared. I wasn't worried. I remember my very first chemo treatment, and the head nurse, freaking rock star, she's, "Okay, this is your bed. You're in bed number 1, and you are extremely important today, and we are going to watch over you extremely closely to make sure that everything goes well with you." And my first treatment didn't go so well. I had to take a drug called rituximab. It's not even a chemotherapy drug, but it's a drug that people typically or react to, and react in different ways. So as I started to get this IV medication inside of me, I started to develop like itchy shoulders, and I got a tickle in my throat, and a little hand up, and the nurses are right there and stop the medication, and they just had to pump me with some antihistamine, and I still had to get the medication, but they just had to do it in a way that was much slower, and monitor me. And again, this is a couple of weeks after now my diagnosis and the tumor being removed, but they all knew, they were all very aware of like having a new baby at home, and everyone feels for you that moment, right? Because it's such a happy time, and you're having to deal with this. And so the cancer center has kind of very strict hours. It's like 8:30 to 4:30, and it's kind of shut down, and they get everything clogged in. And I had gotten there at 8:30. I was the first one in, first in the bed, and like all the other beds are full and everything. But because I had to like stop taking that medication and take it a lot slower, it turned out that I had to be there past 4:30. So the first idea was, okay, well, you know what, he'll come back tomorrow and he can continue. And the nurses were like, "No, he's not coming back. We're gonna stay, and we're gonna make sure that he gets this done so that he can go home and be with his family." Pretty incredible. I was there till 6, right? It doesn't seem like a big deal, but huge deal. I mean, extremely important for my first chemo, for my first treatment. And again, back to what I just said, is they're there for you to take care of you, make sure that you are taken care of, you are one of their families. So one of the many experiences that I had in being taken care of so well. Kind of as we progressed, of course, the chemo really breaks you down. Another thing that I learned going through all of this is, you physically have to go do things, right? Like, you have to decide to go do your treatments. So you make these physical, mental decisions, and you end up having to kind of block out the emotional side of things and the psychological side of things. If you let the fear and the emotions and whatnot overpower, you may not go and do these treatments, and some people don't, because of the fear, the anxiety. So you end up kind of blocking all of that stuff away, but you're very cognizant of it, and it challenges your spiritual ideas, your spiritual theories, whatever it is that governs your spirit. But in going through all this and getting all this treatment and experiencing everything, I never really developed the strong emotional feelings or the psychological fears that would come with it. And it's, again, because of such a huge, strong familial community at the Cancer Center. The amount of work that the Canadian Cancer Society does is tremendous for our community. I know they do a ton of research. I know that they provide information booklets and a resource website. They provide rides. They have the peer support program, I think it is. I think that's what it's called, which is an incredible resource for somebody that's going through cancer or for a loved one. I've actually done the training, and I've been that counselor, if you will. I've talked to a couple people where they are in a similar situation where maybe they're in their 30s and they've got a new kid or a kid on the way, and they're struggling with the treatments, with their wife, with the job, with whatever's going on. And it's really nice to be able to talk to somebody going through it. It's incredibly valuable. Obviously, I'm speaking from experience. So the work that they're doing, it's awesome that you guys are raising the money to support it. So we thank you as cancer survivors and families that are going through it. It does mean a lot that people are out supporting it and supporting the work that the Canadian Cancer Society does. So thank you. And again, the committee, thank you for continuing to make this happen. Virtual Relay for Life, thank you for not giving up and making sure that it gets done. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Seriously and sincerely, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us tonight, sharing your story, and truly impacting Windsor, Essex County with all that you have done thus far.